would like to complete your ensemble.
Oh, no. There's something else of yours that I want.
Oh, really? What's that?
Your ass!
Burt Reynolds once called it one of the worst decisions of his career, and yet millions of people still can't stop watching it. That contradiction alone tells you there's more to the Cannonball Run than screeching tires and slapstick jokes. Behind the cameras, the film hit a strange mix of real danger, real heartbreak, real rebellion, and real Hollywood politics that most audiences never clocked, even after decades of re-watching it on lazy weekend afternoons. What looks like a goofy, harmless comedy from 1981 was actually built on top of an illegal cross-country race, a career-changing tragedy, and a series of accidents that reshaped how movies are made. To understand why this film still fascinates people more than 40 years later, you have to go back before the cameras ever rolled, to a protest that had nothing to do with entertainment at all. In 1971, automotive journalist Brock Yates, a longtime editor at Car and Driver magazine, teamed up with race car driver Dan Gurney to challenge the newly imposed national speed limits that the United States government had introduced in the name of safety and fuel conservation. Yates believed skilled drivers could handle high speeds responsibly, and instead of simply writing an op-ed about it, he decided to prove it on the open road. He and Gurney drove from New York to California in under 36 hours, with no permits, no official sanction, and no patience for speed traps. What began as a personal statement quickly turned into an underground phenomenon. Word of their run spread through car culture circles, and over the next several years, unofficial cross-country dashes kept happening in secret, drawing in drivers who wanted their own shot at defying the system. Some competitors showed up in exotic sports cars built for speed. Others got creative, including one team that disguised an actual working ambulance, complete with sirens, forged medical documents, and a fake patient in the back, just to slip past police checkpoints unnoticed. It worked more often than it should have. That real disguise wasn't just a fun bit of trivia invented for the movie. The Dodge ambulance used on screen in the Cannonball Run was reportedly the same vehicle Yates and director Hal Needham had used during an actual outlaw race years earlier, one that had overheated and nearly caught fire in the desert near Palm Springs before the team pushed through to the finish anyway. When Needham decided to adapt Yates's real-life obsession into a studio comedy, Yates didn't just consult on the script. He appeared in the film himself, playing a race official, a role that mirrored exactly what he had done in reality as the actual organizer of the events that inspired the story. Casting the film brought its own strange twists. Burt Reynolds agreed to star largely because of his friendship with Needham, who had directed him in earlier hits like Smokey and the Bandit. But once filming began, Reynolds reportedly grew frustrated with the loose, barely there script and later admitted in interviews that he only did the movie as a favor and for the paycheck, eventually calling it one of the choices in his career he regretted most. Ironically, audiences didn't share his disappointment, and the film became a box office success that only reinforced his image as Hollywood's charming daredevil. Farrah Fawcett had an entirely different kind of confusion on set. According to accounts from cast and crew over the years, she reportedly believed she had signed onto a serious road drama with a romantic angle, not a slapstick comedy. It wasn't until she attended the premiere and heard the audience laughing throughout the film that she realized what kind of movie she had actually made. That mismatch between her expectations and the tone around her may have unintentionally worked in the film's favor, since her more grounded performance created a contrast that made the surrounding chaos feel even funnier. Speaking of chaos, Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't even supposed to be part of the cast. The role eventually associated with his priest disguise alongside Dean Martin was originally intended for Don Rickles, who dropped out shortly before filming. Davis stepped in with very little preparation time and ended up delivering some of the most memorable scenes in the entire movie. What audiences may not have realized is that the loose, boozy energy between Martin and Davis wasn't entirely performance. Reports from the production suggest the drinks in their hands during those scenes were real, and many of their lines were improvised rather than scripted, which is part of why their chemistry felt so natural. Needham, rather than reining them in, reportedly let the two actors run with it, trusting that their genuine friendship would translate into comedic gold, and it did. Roger Moore's involvement created a very different kind of controversy. At the time, Moore was still actively playing James Bond for MGM, and his role in the Cannonball Run leaned into a parody of that same suave secret agent persona. MGM was reportedly not amused, viewing the spoof as a threat to the seriousness of their franchise. In the aftermath, the studio is said to have restricted future Bond actors from taking on roles that mocked or parodied the character, a policy shift that traced directly back to Moore's comedic detour in this film. Not every behind-the-scenes story from the Cannonball Run ended in laughter. During production, Stuntwoman Heidi Von Beltz was involved in a high-speed crash while riding in an Aston Martin that reportedly had mechanical issues and lacked properly installed seatbelts. When the vehicle collided with a van, she was thrown forward and suffered a broken neck, leaving her paralyzed for the rest of her life at just 24 years old. Her accident became a turning point for stunt safety standards in the film industry, contributing to changes such as mandatory seatbelts in stunt vehicles and more rigorous safety oversight on set, reforms that came at a devastating personal cost. Jackie Chan's experience on the film tells a quieter but equally significant story. This was his American film debut, and while he brought his signature martial arts style to the role of a high-tech racer, much of his action footage was reportedly cut for being considered too intense for the film's light comedic tone. Adding insult to that disappointment, he was credited in the film as Japanese despite being proudly Chinese, a mistake that reflected the era's carelessness around Asian representation in Hollywood. Rather than walking away discouraged, Chan used the experience as motivation to build his career on his own terms, eventually returning to American audiences years later with films like Rumble in the Bronx and Rush Hour that let him control his own image and comedic action style. Interestingly, Chan also became inspired by one of the film's most beloved features. Its blooper reel played over the closing credits. At the time, this was still a fairly novel idea for major studio releases, and audiences loved watching the cast crack up during takes. Chan reportedly carried that concept forward into his own later films, making blooper reels a signature element of his work from Police Story through Rush Hour. The production also brushed up against real legal trouble more than once. A low-flying jet stunt filmed without proper clearance reportedly drew an investigation from the Federal Aviation Administration after the film's release, given the serious safety risks of flying that close to the ground without authorization. Separately, a staged high-speed chase filmed on the streets of Las Vegas was apparently so convincing that real police officers, unaware a movie was being filmed, responded as though it were an actual pursuit, briefly threatening to shut down production entirely before the misunderstanding was cleared up. Some of the film's chaos was simply personality-driven. Dom DeLucci's tendency to break character laughing, a habit often called corpsing in the film industry, reportedly happened so often that some of those genuine reactions made it into the final cut because they were funnier than anything scripted. Meanwhile, Burt Reynolds' stunt double, Roy Tatum, apparently resembled him so closely that crew members and even producers were occasionally fooled on set, a resemblance strong enough that Tatum sometimes walked through scenes without anyone questioning it. Hal Needham's commitment to authenticity extended to his own garage. He reportedly used his personal Ferrari 308 GTS in several driving scenes rather than relying solely on studio vehicles, a decision that risked serious damage to his own property in the name of capturing more genuine action. That same appetite for genuine energy over polish is often credited with why studio executives, watching raw dailies during production, reportedly greenlit a sequel before filming had even wrapped. The film's cultural reach didn't stop at cinema either. Its spirit of fast cars, open highways, and rebellious freedom is often cited as an influence on Sega's arcade classic Outrun, released in 1986, which captured a similar sense of joyride freedom rather than strict competitive racing. Even the film's smaller corners hid surprises, including uncredited appearances from Valerie Perrine, best known for Superman, NASCAR broadcaster Ken Squire playing a highway patrol officer, and Peter Fonda appearing briefly as himself in a nod to his Easy Rider legacy. None of these cameos changed the plot, but they added quiet layers of authenticity and inside joke charm for anyone paying close attention. Taken together, these stories reveal a film built less on careful planning and more on real friendships, real risks, and a few real tragedies, all wrapped inside a movie that never took itself too seriously. That contrast, between the surface-level goofiness and the genuine chaos underneath, is probably why the Cannonball Run has endured. It wasn't just a comedy about outrunning the law. It was, in its own messy way, a document of the people who made it, flaws, friendships, and all.